better person to introduce than this woman here to my left. Salesforce Kate, as you may know her, is an amazing person in this community. And in fact, she is the first person I met in the Ohana. When I pivoted into Salesforce, I found out somehow that there was a Denver admin community. And I know I'm standing on stage, so you're probably like, there's no way Nikki would ever be nervous about anything, but I was dying with every step going into that event. Here in Denver, at the United Way Mile High, and I walked up to the registration desk, and Miss Smiley here said hello. I'm like, okay, I think I might be okay. She seems really nice. These people might be really nice. So you represented the community very well. And Kate has been a huge supporter of mine through my 4 years here in the community, not only encouraging me with my certifications and studying, she is just a wonderful person to have a chat with. So don't all tackle her after she's done talking, but definitely get to know this woman. She is amazing. And I'm super stoked to introduce her and this speech, which is, should I do this with some enthusiasm?
Yeah.
But I don't want to be a developer. Why admins should learn dev fundamentals. Everybody, give it up. Salesforce Kate.
That was pretty much the nicest introduction I've ever received in my life. I'm crying over here. Thank you so much, Nikki. We will have slides, I promise. But I just want to start off by saying, with the exception of last year, I have been at every single Mile High Dreamin', back in the days when it was Daydreamin' 5280 with Joanna. This is amazing. This is huge. Look at this space. Look at these people. We're here for 2 days. We have all these sessions, amazing content. Big props to the crew here for putting this on. Thank you so much. That was going to be my segue into yay sponsors for making this all possible, which I'll say anyways. Thank you so much. I do also work on the Forcelandia Planning Committee. It's another local community conference. And I can't tell you, these events are not possible without sponsors. So please go talk to all of them, go to their booths, their stations, learn about them, and what they do, because they are making this whole event possible. That's put on by volunteers. I'm just gonna keep going, even though, maybe we're working on it. Yeah. We did it. Thank you so much. Awesome. We'll just skip you a couple. Thank you, sponsors, thank you. Who am I, aside from my amazing intro? I feel like you probably already know me pretty well. I am Kate Lassard. I used to be one of the TRO leaders here of the Denver admin group. I am now a co-leader of the Portland Women in Tech group. I moved to Portland, Oregon right before the pandemic. Super amazing to get there and not know anyone. But fortunately, I had this community to keep in touch with. I am a delivery team manager, and I am the enterprise practice lead at Arcus. We are a Salesforce Summit level consulting partner, and we specialize in the nonprofit space. I hold 14 Salesforce certifications, and since my entire life is not Salesforce, I spend my free time with my 3 dogs, and then I teach yoga. Okay, we don't have a ton of time today, so I really want to give us a framework of what we're doing and what we're talking about. We're going to start with a little bit about my journey. I promise it will be really short, but I want you to have some context of why we're here. Then I'm going to talk to you about 4 very specific dev fundamentals that I use every single week in my life as a consultant. These were things that I learned from Rad Women Code, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. And then we'll wrap it up. I'll leave you with some resources, and hopefully we can connect after this. All right, so the journey. I started out as a true accidental admin. I have a master's in museum studies and art history. I was working for a local nonprofit here in Denver, Colorado, and my first day on the job, they asked me if I'd ever heard of Salesforce. Nope, but you're in charge of it. total panic. 1 year later, oh no, we've lost them again. 1 year later, made the switch to intentional admin, which is a really big, important shift that I like to call out in my mind. I was working with a consultant who had helped build the org, had really taken me under her wing, taught me Salesforce in one-on-one sessions, made time to study with me at Starbucks after work. So within a year, I had landed a full-time Salesforce admin position. I was certified, and I was on my way. Actually, very cool. Alexis, raise your hands. Salesforce admin at that org, right here in the room. Very cool. So it was in healthcare, very customized org. We had a lot of regulatory compliance to deal with, as well as private health information. So it was a huge learning curve. Really got up to speed, was able to work with an architect there and just continue my educational journey. So once I left that position, I was there a couple years, I was like, okay, what's next? I want to lead a team. So I took a role in sales operations, leading a Salesforce team, owning Salesforce and everything that touched it. So that was really cool, but I think that the important thing to call out there is that when you're at the top of the Salesforce pyramid, your education options change, right? You have to be really directive about what you're doing, how you want to learn, and where you're taking that next step. So I had to spend a lot of time figuring out, like, what do I want to do? And that is where Rad Women came into place. I was at TDX, learned about Rad Women, was able to meet Angela Mahoney, Melissa Hansen, Kieran, and was able to really learn about the program, which is Radical Apex Developers. They go ahead and they teach Apex to anyone that identifies as women and who has a certain amount of expertise in the Salesforce platform so that they can close the gender gap in technology, and specifically with developers. So, very intensive couple months in my life. A lot of hard work went into that. I learned a ton. I would even say that it's maybe like the pivotal education moment in my Salesforce career. But the first thing that I learned, the most important thing, was that I didn't want to be a developer. I think a lot of people go into that program and they have the exact opposite response. However, as I, throughout the years, made my shift to consulting and landed in my current role, there are still things from Rad Women that I learned that I use every single week, if not every single day in my job. And so those are the 4 things that I want to talk to you about today. So why admins should learn dev fundamentals? Really important. Salesforce is huge. There are a ton of different clouds. There's so much that you can do, and it's always changing. There's always something new coming out. There's never a way that you are going to be the technical expert in every single thing that's all Salesforce. It is not even humanly possible. So your job can't be to know everything, but your job can be to understand what is possible. And so learning what the platform can do and getting those dev fundamentals and understanding how declarative can work with development is very important. This also helps you be able to convey technical concepts back to either your users, your stakeholders, or the teams that you're working with. So if you are working with technical teams, you should be able to communicate and collaborate with them effectively. So this is the why. All right, here is the important part. This is the 4 biggest takeaways. There are so many more than 4, but we've got 20 minutes together, so we're gonna talk about 4 that I learned in Rad Women that I use every single week in my job. The first one is the ability to think through a process. And so this was the first thing we learned the first day of our Rad Women cohort, pseudocode. So pseudocode is code that is written in plain language. I'm gonna reference my notes here, make sure that I catch everything. It describes what you want to do, what you want the code to do, the details and the steps that are involved. And the good thing is that it organizes your thoughts and works through the thought process and the business process so that you can do that without the syntax being involved. So, first exercise, first day of Rad Women, we all were assigned to pick something as a group that we knew how to do and break it down step by step. My group decided that we all knew how to make an awesome grilled cheese sandwich. On the left is how I started off. I've made a grilled cheese 100, maybe 1,000 times. These were the instructions that I worked with. This was what we came up with at the end. Actually, I cut off a couple so that they could fit on the slide. You have to break it down and assume that your user or the person you're explaining to does not understand step by step what's happening. So as a consultant, this is super important because a lot of times I'm leading training for people that are not technical. If I say, go to the app launcher and open up NPSP settings, they're just going to stare at me. What does that mean? So you have to reframe. Go to the top left-hand corner of your page. You're going to see 9 dots. They're going to look like a waffle. You hover over them. They'll make a rainbow. Click that. Scroll down. Click View All. This opens the app launcher. The app launcher houses all of your different applications in Salesforce. You guys get the drift. So really important to be able to do that because you're often talking to people that don't have the same navigation skills you have. They don't have the same terminology that you have. And they can't just navigate and understand Salesforce in their sleep and do these processes the way that you can. Super important with documentation as well. So when you're writing things like job scripts or like writing testing documents. All right, number 2, know your variables and your data types. I am going to assume that most of the people in this room have created a custom field at some point in Salesforce. I see a lot of nods. When you create a custom field, you have to tell Salesforce, is it a number? Is it text? Is this a checkbox? Boolean? Data types, that's probably your first exposure. But when you get into flows, you're also oftentimes defining variables. All right, I'm going to use a lot. If any of you have read the Women Code Heroes, Cooking with Code, I use a lot of their stuff in this slide deck and pulled over some images. I'm going to grab a quote from Kieran Jameson. This is her blog, and it was one of our homework assignments for Rad Women. And Kieran says that you can think of a variable as a container in which stuff can be stored. So kind of like those handy kitchen storage containers, they come in different sizes, and they store different types of things. So knowing those variables, defining them, knowing when you need to use them, and then plugging them into your flow. Use it every single week, again, if not every single day. All right, we're building in complexity here, right? So now we're going to talk about SOQL, which is Salesforce Object Query Language. Learned about SOQL in Rad Women. Was like, okay, I don't know when I'm going to use this because I don't want to be a developer. Went to an awesome session at Witness Success that same year with Louise Lockey that was for admins to leverage SOQL using Workbench. It put the pieces together. I'm going to ask you guys a question. I want participation, show of hands. How many of you have ever been in a situation where a user or a stakeholder has either called you, emailed you, maybe even shown up at your desk and been like, hey, I need this information from Salesforce. For example, how many accounts do we have that are in an industry of financial services? Yeah. So as an admin, you go to reports, right? You pull down information. You're like, oh, look, we've got 42. Of those of you that raised your hand, how many of you have experienced that same person being like, okay, cool, of those 42, how many of those, sponsored an event 3 years ago at this level that you can't pull in that same account report type? Yeah. So your options and what you would think is, okay, I need a new report type. You either go find one, maybe you have to create one, maybe this person is getting really impatient and is like, wait, no, of these 42 right here, just make it happen here. SOQL lets you do that. So this is just the anatomy of a SOQL statement, and that's pretty small. You might not be able to see that, so I'll have to make sure that I get this shared out with you. You're basically writing information or writing a statement to query your Salesforce and get information back. And you can tell Salesforce what it wants, what you would like it to provide you. So you're saying that you're selecting certain fields that you would like to see. From what object? And then you have kind of some options to either filter down on that, order that information, or put a limit on what the results are that you get back. Another really awesome Cooking with Code blog post about how to leverage SOQL. All right, cruising right along to our last takeaway, and this is to keep your DML, and your sock wool. I don't use that as much every day, though, so that's why it's in parentheses, out of your loops. All right, we'll start with a couple definitions. Loops allow us to do a function over and over again. You might be familiar with using these in flows. And DML is database manipulation language. So think of these as commands like update records or insert records or delete records. I have this image up here. It's from one of my coworkers. He wrote a fantastic blog post about this and keeping your DML out of your loops in your flows specifically. And we've got the bad example on the left, and then we've got the best practice on the right. So what happens is we can run up against Salesforce governor limits. You're allowed, I think it's 100 SQL queries in a transaction and 150 DML statements. So if you're looping through something over and over and over again in your flow, you've run a pretty hefty chance of hitting one of those limits and erroring out. And I don't know about you guys, but I still get really scared every time I get that error message. If we complete our loop, add our DML, our insert, or in this case, I think it's update records up there. After we've completed that, we can run through this hundreds, thousands of times, and the only limit that we're gonna be looking at is running up against that, I think it's 20,000 transactions that you can have in a flow. Way farther out, way less scary. We're probably not gonna hit that. So that's why that's really important. And this is probably the thing that I use the most. Every time I'm working on a flow and I do a loop, I'm like, oh, where's my DML? Keep it out of the loop. All right, that puts us right at 119. We are so good, you guys. I have these resources. I'll have to make sure these get shared to you. I think that there's a drive that I can put them in so that you can have access to this. I have resources here that Keep Your DML Outside of the Loop blog post by my colleague, James Bujo. We've got the Apex Best Practices and the 15 Apex Commandments by Kevin Poorman, who happened to be my Rad Women coach. And James Lawfrey, sorry. Women Code Heroes, Cooking with Code. If you are dev curious and you're interested in Rad Women, this is a really good place to start and see, hey, is this for me? Because it's going to put things into really simple language to help you understand those dev fundamentals and concepts. Trailhead, we all know Trailhead is the best. And then some things about pseudocode, how to use Workbench. I still use Workbench for my SQL queries because it gives me a place as a non-developer to actually kind of fill in the information for my queries as I go. It also gives a nice report kind of format, so it feels more like what I'm used to as an admin. And it has some really nice aggregate functions as well, you can count and sum. And then learn more about Rad Women. It is a fantastic opportunity to learn more if you're ready to take that next step. And I'm happy to talk to anybody if you are interested in learning more about Rad Women and my experience. Thank you.
And also, I will say, because of you, in last fall, I took Rad Women Code.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a developer?
No, I do not. I will happily manage developers, though. So, everybody, one more round of applause. Salesforce Kate. Thank you.